I'm sitting here with Sue in her prayer room. Sue Gomez, somebody that I've always really admired and looked up to and looked to as to how I should live my life. And Sue, why don't you tell us a little bit who you are and where you're from?
Well, I was born in Santa Monica, California, and raised there. I was the fifth of five kids. I always hated being the youngest. But anyway, we all survived. And then I moved here to Colorado when I was 19. It was kind of like an adventure. I mean, I was kind of footloose and fancy free, and my brother had come for my parents' wedding anniversary, and they were going to go. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and they wanted to go up to San Francisco anyway. And I says, "Great, I'll just go pack all my stuff in the car, and when you leave San Francisco, I'll follow you back to Boulder." That's where they lived at the time. So that's how I ended up here, and I like this area, and I've always just stayed here. My brother, on the other hand, moved to California and Utah for quite a while, and now he's back, and so he lives not too far from here, over in, I think it's Lakewood or close by it. And
You met your husband Joe here in Colorado, right?
I did. I got a. I was in nursing school for RN, and I was already an LPN at the time. And my husband worked in a lab in a hospital that was in Thornton, was Valley View, and they had sent a message to the nursing program at Community College of Denver. That's where I was in the nursing program, and asking for lab aides, people that like draw the blood and do some work around the lab and stuff. And EKGs we did too. And so for a couple of nights a week, I did that. And my husband is his name was Joe, and he was a lab tech there. That's how we met. He used to tell people that we met in the same vein. And he was kind of a punster. Sometimes it would get on my nerves, but usually it did. It's like, there he goes again. But anyway, yeah, I'm glad I worked in that lab, because that's where I met him.
How many years were you married?
22 and a half. He died from hepatitis C. It was the docs figured he got it from handling blood and urine, because even at that time when I worked in the lab, they didn't wear gloves and stuff when they were doing all these testings. Yeah, so he just he lived 5 years after he got diagnosed.
Wow. And how many kids did you have?
We have two sons, and now I have 5 grandchildren and 3 greats. That's
So
cool.
You're a great grandma.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
You're a great lots of things, Sue.
I don't know about that.
Um, you and I met, I think, mostly through the Catholic Worker at first. Um, how long were you at the Catholic Worker? First, tell us, what is the Catholic Worker? Some people don't know what that is.
Okay, well, the Catholic Worker is hospitality houses, basically. And it's kind of unique in that we have live-in workers and volunteers that come and help. And the guests who are homeless, we all just live in the house like a big family, you know. And they are very, they're pacifists and also social justice activists. And so I learned a lot. I remember one time I went to a protest with Anna. Anna Koop was the sister of Loretto that started the Catholic Worker here. And we were walking down on probably 17th or the 16th Street Mall or something. And there was a big crowd. I mean, we were just walking and protesting and chanting and all that stuff. And there was this guy, every so often there would be somebody taking pictures on the side. And I said, "Oh no, they're taking our pictures." And she goes, "Yeah, that's so they'll have mug shots in case you ever get wanted for anything later on." And so anyway, and I was at the Catholic Worker almost 7.5 years. And it's a good place. I mean, it's like everybody tries to live a more simple life and just kind of be. Our guests would kind of come and go, of course, and they had some responsibility to be working on finding housing, getting jobs or benefits or whatever, you know, they needed, so that when they left the worker, they would have permanent housing and a way to sustain that. And so they stayed like maybe 2 to 3 or 4 months. But towards the end, like that Catholic Worker was there for like close to 30 years.
The house was there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, that Catholic Worker was in that house. It was a rental. It was only $550 a month because was something that they had rented the house, and then a year or 2 later it got sold to somebody else, and they all sat down and had a meeting, and the new landlord was glad to have the house used for that purpose, and so he said that rent's going to stay at $550 and it's never going to get higher. So it was that for probably almost 30 years, actually. Yeah. And then early one morning it caught on fire and was unlivable. After that, it's still standing now. It's been, I think, 5 or 6 years. And it's not that it's ever going to be anything more than it is. It's just a dilapidated house now. But
yeah, I just drove by it. It's swallowed up by condos and apartment buildings now. And there's the old Catholic Worker house still sitting there.
When a lady bought it early on, that's when the landlord was living in California at the time. And as soon as he heard, he said he'll have his agent sell that house as soon as he can. And so they did. And then the new lady was, I think, a native or had been in Five Points for a long time. And she had the purpose of redoing that house, and because she had a thing about preserving the history of the area, so that's what she was motivated with. But after she bought it, she had a structural evaluation done on it, and I guess his conclusion, or their conclusion, was that the house would be fine for about 20 years and then it was just going to fall apart. So it's like, don't put your money into it unless you just want it for 20 years. So anyway, she sold it to somebody else, and it's been sold at least 2 times, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But it costs a lot of money to tear a house down and all that, you know.
So you were talking about war demonstrations. I had the honor of getting arrested demonstrating the war with you, Sue, going to jail with you.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Why did you go to jail? To stop a war, or to try and stop a war?
Well, I just felt like I needed to do that. It was over the war in Iraq, and our whole protest was for Ken Salazar. He was senator then, and we just wanted to talk to him about not voting for more funding for the Iraq war and not to start a war in Iran. And he didn't want to talk to us. He was in the state. He was on a tour of something down south. I can't remember now what it was, here in Colorado. And he refused to talk to us, but we were we were orderly and stuff. We didn't cause problems inside, except their waiting area was so small. I mean, it was like closet size. And so we were kind of sitting around in a circle on the floor, and their reception desk was right there. So if we were saying something, we're naming off the people who had died in the Iraq war and their ages, and then we would ring a bell, like a bong kind of bell after. But if we were talking at the time and the phone rang, we all would, just kind of put a lid on it for a minute. And we were like that all afternoon. And then it came time to close, and we weren't going anywhere. And so they called the cops. And, they, of course, gave us a warning: if you don't get up here and get out on your own, we're going to take you out. And we all just stayed. We had a lot of other protesters that came and went in the afternoon too. Yeah, so that was interesting. They took us right to the jail.
So, I mean, what going to jail is a big deal. I mean, why would you do that? So, I mean, what was your thoughts or your beliefs that were?
Well, I think it's just to help people maybe think a little bit about what's going on. I think so many times we don't really stop and think about the wars or this or that. And but if we hear about protests and people getting arrested, I mean, and even people are killed in the protests and stuff. And then it draws it to our attention. It has to be right in our forefront of our mind, at least for a while. And so I guess that's what I would hope, that people would just stop and think and consider all the ramifications of the war or whatever we're protesting, and see how each person's, we're all responsible in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess that was my thing. And we did spend the night in jail. Yeah, I got in a cell with 2 other ladies, and it was a 2-person cell. So I put my mat kind of under the bottom bunk so I can get out at the light. That light, it's like you're in an operating room or something.
Yeah, that was an experience.
Yeah, boy, you kind of understand right away why they call it the slammer. Because those doors are opening and closing and they slam every time.
Yeah, and you and I have both been in the Romero Theater Troupe for many years. What are your thoughts about the Romero Troupe? What has it given you? What about the Romero Troupe?
I just like learning. I've learned a lot in there. Because like if in some of our scenes, like especially when I was in that scene, I would like when we did Mother Jones, I got this big thick book about 500 pages, read the whole thing so I could know who she was. And when I was one of the Dominican sisters, Sister Orta Plati, we were doing a scene about when they protested at the N8 missile silo. So I sent her and Sister Carol an email asking what they were thinking that while they were doing that, and what they would want to say on that stage if they were me instead of me being them. I mean, or what did they? I kind of like, what did they want people to know somehow? And Sister Arta sent me the prayer that they said when they were, right there at the missile silo after they cut the wires and got through the gate and poured the blood and stuff. Yeah, that made me cry. That prayer. Now I can't even remember it really.
I vaguely remember it too. I remember it was beautiful, but I couldn't recite it now.
I know. Every time I had to do it, it would make me cry. But that was a real gift to get to know them. But I did know them because I stayed at Jonah House in Baltimore for a week one time, long before that, that time that we were doing that play. And so that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, I know Ben Salmon, you really did a lot of work around that after we did a skit about Ben Salmon, a guy that resisted World War One,
Yeah.
a draft resistor here in Denver. I know you really did a lot of work behind Ben
Yeah.
Salmon.
Well, I still am. Still am. We just recently merged with a group on the East Coast that's been working for Ben Salmon. We're trying to get him beatified in the Catholic Church. And just for me, it's just so people know what he did. You know, he was totally nonviolent, totally lived the gospel, and he suffered a lot because of it. They figured he died. He was only 43 when he died, and he'd been in the military prisons and stuff for 2.5 years. During and after, he didn't even get out until after the war ended. And anyway, he decided to go on a fast in there, and they were tube feeding him. But back then, tube feeding was like they used a funnel and shoved it down their throat, and then poured milk and eggs down and held his nose so he could, he had to swallow. Then they sent him off to St. Elizabeth's insane asylum for the criminally ill, and put him in the ward with the most dangerous people, the most violent criminals that they had there. But he wrote like a 200 and some page manifesto, or I don't know what you want to call it, testament, against the theory of the just war, and all the things that how he came to that conclusion is about what all that is about.
Yeah, and you guys are working, among other things, you are trying to get him, the term is beatification, is that right?
Yeah.
Made a saint.
Yeah, there's different stages of it. So there's the first stage is servant of God, and that's when a bishop in a diocese or archdiocese said, okay, we're going to open a cause, we're going to work on canonizing this guy. Then that's the last stage, the sainthood, and the beatification comes in there in between. And it's like, well, we've done enough research now, we've studied enough, and we believe that he is going to be canonized. But the church just moves so slowly, and so it just takes a long time. Like on our Ben Salmon group that we're workers, we're all older, and so it's like, well, none of us are going to ever see this happen, but we're going to keep hoping that it does. But hopefully we'll get some young people and that have the time and energy to work on it, and they'll be the ones to see it through.
Yeah, it could happen. I mean, Dorothy Day, the founder of the Catholic Worker Party,
Yeah,
it finally happened for her.
Yeah, Dorothy Day was a real protester and pacifist.
Yeah, a fighter, a pacifist fighter.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Sue, can you tell us like where you're living now?
Well, I live at Casa Caribous de Maine. It's the Mission House of Welcome. They've taken words from different languages and put it together. And it was originally started for people interested in going to mission and people returning, kind of their reentry back into the States. And that was when Jim and Karen Weaver owned the house. That Jim and Karen weren't even married yet when they started this house, but they met at Maryknoll Mission training in New York before they went to their first mission. And their dream was to have this house be a community house, and with the people coming and going and stuff. And now here, the family owns the house, because Jim and Karen, when they returned from their last mission and weren't going to go back to another mission, they wanted to buy a farm in Port Angeles, Washington, and they needed money to help them buy that house. And so Aaron and Julia bought it, and it was a good deal for everybody. In that the house has continued to be sort of that way. We have groups now that come from colleges and stay a week, and so they're immersion groups, and they do service projects downtown. And so then they live in community that week, and we interact with them some. There's a man that lives in the carriage house behind this one with his family, Rodolfo, and he, for one of those nights that the group is here, then they'll make a very authentic Mexican dinner. I always tell people it's so authentic you can't even get it in the Mexican restaurants. And so the students cook with him. And then he often, after the dinner, he will tell his story. And Miguel, that lives here, often will be his translator, because Rodolfo is just much more comfortable speaking in Spanish. So anyway, so that's fun having the groups. And then in the summer, for quite a few summers now, we've had Dry Bones interns, and they're a group that works with the street kids and provides some kind of an immersion retreat for kids, just high school or college kids that come for a weekend retreat up in the mountains. And so the group stays here for about 10 weeks and then goes on back to wherever they were. So I really like all that. I like the comings and goings and meeting a lot of different people and just kind of being involved in whatever way.
And it's still very much a community house.
Yeah, it is. I feel very blessed because, excuse me, I'm 76, and the next oldest down from me is like, I think Aaron and Julia are 35. And so but we all love each other.
And you have little little kids here, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
Yeah, the youngest is 2,
wow, that's great.
and his oldest brother is 7. So we have a lot of excitement in the house. And then we have another little boy that is the son of one of our members, and he comes, well, quite a bit. I'd say probably averages out to half of the week each week.
Yeah.
So that's a real gift, because it kind of keeps you. I don't know if I'm getting old and set in my way. Well, it didn't help me not get old, but maybe I'm not as set in my ways as I might have been. So
Yeah, we all need young people in our lives, for sure.
Isn't that the truth?
So you've had some health problems these last few years.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're very humble and you don't like talking about this, but tell me what you want about that.
Oh, well, yeah, I have currently probably 3 things that could kill me off. I mean, once, like, I had a heart attack in August and almost died. They put a stent in, but it's doing fine now, I think. And then before that, I got diagnosed with emphysema, and now most recently, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I'm finding that's not a real fun thing to have, but whatever, kind of attacks your innards, and so they put me on a immune system suppressant. I'm not real happy about that, because I'm exposed to a lot of creeping crud, and yeah, so we'll just see what happens. But I'd still try to, like I do volunteer at Denver Health 2 days a week still. And
What do you do when you volunteer there?
I'm a patient visitor for spiritual care, and I bring communion to the Catholics. And that's good, because they're, I mean, we have a lot of homeless patients who don't really have friends or family. Some of them like to talk, and I don't mind listening. I'm just glad for the opportunity to be there.
And you've been doing that for 12 years.
Yeah, 14.
14 years. Oh my
this
goodness.
month. Yeah.
Jeez,
It's
and
good.
we'd run into each other there too.
Yeah, I know. We've run in a lot of circles there here, Arnie. Yeah.
Well, Sue, this is a hard world sometimes, and there's a lot of hustle and bustle and a lot of negativity. A lot of people are really suffering. But what keeps you going? What keeps you? You're like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going, and don't stop doing the right thing.
Oh.
What keeps you going, Sue?
It's got to be my faith, I think. My faith keeps me. It's not just in a little box of some part of me somewhere. It's kind of my being. And so I'm a Roman Catholic. Have been since I was a year old, because my dad couldn't get a Sunday off to get baptized me before then. Yeah. So, yeah, I know that's what it is.
Your faith.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people say they're Roman Catholics, but they don't volunteer for 14 years or go get arrested to stop a war or live at the Catholic Worker House to help people that don't have a place to stay. I mean, what about what part of your faith? I mean, if you don't mind my asking. It's okay.
I think probably since I was pretty young, I just knew that we're here to help each other in whatever way we can, and that I do these No One Dies Alone vigils with people that are dying at the hospital sometimes, and I always, when I'm sitting there, and I think, man, you're in that bed tonight, and I'm sitting here in this chair, and I'm in that bed tomorrow night. I hope somebody's in this chair. So it's like sometimes we're the helper, and sometimes we're the helpee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, finally, so what would you tell a young person nowadays navigating this world and trying to figure out what to do, how to live their life?
Mm-hmm. I think just find what works for you and do it. Do it the best you can. You know.
Well, Sue, I just want to tell you that you've been a big part of my life, and I've learned a lot from you, and I love you very much, and thank you for spending time with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for hanging out. Didn't think I'd be able to do the whole deal.
You did the whole deal, Sue.